Welcome to episode 45, Construction Nation. This is Sue Dyer, your host of Construction Dream Team, where I interview industry leaders and experts so you can learn about the people side of construction and build your construction dream team based on OPE, other people's experiences. The shortest way to success is to learn from others who've already been there and done that, and maybe they're pushing the envelope of what's possible, and why wouldn't you want to do that too? And that is certainly true of our guest today, who I have known for several decades now, and is always someone who pushes the envelope to look and see what's possible. And so I would like to welcome to Construction Dream Team today, Larry Eisenberg, who is the principal at Ovis Partners 360. I want to make sure I had the name right.
Very good.
So prior to co-founding Ovis Partners 360, Larry served as the executive director of facilities planning and development for the Los Angeles Community College District. And this is the largest community college district in the nation. Really, really huge. Many campuses. I think there's 20 different colleges, something like that, Larry?
Nine colleges.
Nine colleges, okay.
Yeah.
So he directed the district's award-winning $16 billion sustainable building program. And that's what we're going to talk about today is sustainability. And he did a lot with this. He was able to figure out ways to use renewables that actually help the district save money on their maintenance in the 85 new buildings that were developed. So welcome to Construction Dream Team, Larry.
It's a great pleasure to join you, Sue.
So tell us, I know we talked a little bit about your background, but tell us more about your journey to starting Ovis, and also what kind of led you towards the sustainability component, because you could have gone lots of directions, and this is where your heart was. So tell us about that.
That is true. It's I've really been into this almost all my life, because growing up in Los Angeles as a little kid, there were days when I couldn't go outside because there was too much smog, and that really prompted me to think about, what do we do about this, and ultimately, as you know, I went to MIT with the idea that I would do city planning, and did that, and ultimately wound up after 12 years in Wisconsin. I went to work for University of Wisconsin System as their chief facilities officer, and during that time really got into sustainability. And one of the key things was my presence at the birth of the energy service company offering idea of doing energy conservation, because Johnson Controls came to me, the chief facilities officer, and said, "We have this idea, we'll change your light bulbs and we'll do it for free." And that sounds good to me. And we did that. And of course, great success. And Johnson quickly filled in their peers in the industry. And what do you know, the energy service company concept created. Ultimately, through my subsequent jobs, carried that idea forward to LA and CCD, which was, as you mentioned, largest green building program in higher education and perhaps in the world to do that. And given the billions of dollars at my command, had the ability to experiment in a way that never ever happened in my career, to be able to build buildings with different technologies, compare side by side, and ultimately create a solution that was really spectacular. And was really helped by our board of trustees that when I was hired 2003, they were committed to making this the greenest building program literally in the world. They had the money to do it, and they needed someone to help. And guess what? They got me. So that was basically my plunge. From LACCD, I learned a tremendous amount. And ultimately, when I left, created Ovis Partners 360 as a way to really carry the ideas that I developed into the private sector, with in particular the idea of net zero energy, a building that produces as much energy as it uses in the course of a year to make that happen. And so that's what I've been up to.
Cool. So let's just dive back a little bit more into LACCD, because I worked on many of those projects with you. And tell us more about what you were able to achieve and maybe how you did it.
So the the really interesting thing in terms of sustainability when I got there, because I was already pretty expert at sustainability, and I knew LEED and knew the guys, U.S. Green Building Council. When I got to LA, there were across all of LA, because I subsequently asked USGBC this question, how many architects at LA are LEED certified? And the answer was 17 in 2003. When I left in 2011, there were 17,000 LEED certified architects. And I accept responsibility for much of that because in my program that employed many of them, I mandated that they be LEED certified to help do the design of the buildings to make that happen. So that created a huge transformation in Los Angeles and ultimately in California to have that kind of momentum doing that, make that move forward. The result of that was that we were able to build, of the 85 buildings you mentioned, 20 of them finished basically LEED Platinum. And we found in that process that LEED Platinum was actually cheaper than regular construction, which counters a myth in the industry that platinum is expensive. My evidence was, no, it's not, and needs to be done consistently for every building project, whether it's a remodel or a new build, to make that happen. The rest of our buildings, 85, were gold certified. We actually got a couple campuses to be net zero in terms of their own production of energy as part of that, and created a couple building complexes themselves that were net zero as part of the activity. So it was a great opportunity to demonstrate what can be done in this kind of arena.
Can we back up a little bit and talk about the platinum being cheaper? Do you have any ideas on why that there must have been things that were done that ended up making it that way?
It's really actually quite logical when you think about it, because part of platinum calls for things like taking out the ceiling, the drop ceiling, taking out the floor, just using concrete, and each of those things has expense associated with it. So if you don't have to spend money on a drop ceiling or a carpeting or whatever, then cheaper, just by definition, to do that. But the reality was that certain things can be done that makes such great sense. One of the examples out of my value engineering experience was that you were building a parking structure, wanted to paint the walls white to help light reflectivity, make it easier to light the structure. And in value engineering, we said, wait a minute, we can instead basically put pigment into the concrete itself and keep it white, never have to paint it again to do that. So that just many examples of where cheaper.
So lots of innovations came from it too, it sounds like.
That is correct.
So I also recall that there were things that occurred because of this, like they actually budgeted less maintenance because it was an offset from maintenance to what was saved on the energy actually paid for the maintenance of all the buildings, which I thought was pretty spectacular for this many buildings across so many campuses.
Definitely. It gave us a chance to actually improve how we did facilities management and think about using software, both in the construction process and ultimately transferring those buildings from construction into the maintenance mode to do that. So it gave us a chance to use sophisticated solutions to make that happen, software and maintenance management software as part of that, and feed the system directly out of the construction process to make that happen. And the other thing is the choice of materials, the idea that those are sustainable things, that if we don't have to keep cleaning things, we don't have to keep updating things because we use better stuff up front, then it does reduce ongoing cost.
So I recall sitting in some meetings where you would share about some of the new technologies that were coming out. Like I remember there was windmills and sorts of different things that you could put on top of your building. So since then, I'm sure a lot of improvements have happened in technology that help us to achieve this level of sustainability or net zero. What changes have you seen and are you seeing moving forward?
There are just a lot of exciting developments in this arena and makes me quite optimistic about our ability to deal with climate change if people really get on board. I mean, one example is the idea of windows that make electricity, completely clear windows that support that. The idea of rooftop wind turbines is a active common kind of thing to do. Lighting design, one of the areas that's making progress really interesting is basically building a building with DC electric service throughout the building. It's highly efficient, 75% more efficient than AC electricity in the building, and almost all of our devices ultimately use DC. So it was really a sort of an interesting idea of going backwards takes us forward and makes a big, big difference to do that. So lots of technological things happening at this point that can be incorporated in to buildings. Control systems, lighting control, daylighting control, occupancy sensors are things that happen now and getting pretty standard and pretty inexpensive as well.
And I remember that there was also changes in photovoltaics, which I know we're using a lot more, but I'm assuming that those have become a lot more efficient too. So tell us what's happening with just that, what we're putting on top of our roofs and parking lots and underneath the ground.
More efficient and much, much cheaper. When I did the first photovoltaic array at LACCD, we paid $8 a watt to install that. Today, that same cost could be $1.70. It's a tremendous difference going on. And it's part of the thing that I always wound up believing, that ultimately the economy was going to drive this forward, not the idea of being environmentally responsible. Because now being sustainable is cheaper than not being sustainable. And so from that standpoint, the electricity that we produce that way, cheaper than can be produced by coal or natural gas. Make that happen. So great benefit to institutions to think about using these kind of solutions.
And are they made, like when you're in the installation, I'm assuming there's been improvements in installation too, because I remember how many penetrations there used to have to be to install some of this
Definitely.
stuff.
A lot of work on the idea of ballasted systems on rooftops that don't require any penetration at all to do that. The idea of broad span kind of structural solutions that require very few penetrations to do that. So yeah, there are technical things that have happened now, that fasteners that have come into the industry that just sort of snap panels in place as part of that, making it really, really easy to install.
So what advice would you offer to owners who want to explore implementing more sustainability or even creating it as a strategy? Because to me, that was what was so unique at LACCD is this was a strategy to offset maintenance costs. And so it was, again, like you said, economics. So what would you tell owners today?
So I think the really important thing to understand is that, again, it is about economics and the idea that sustainability in your building design, whether again it's new build or retrofit, ultimately leads to much lower operational costs. But at the same time, there are financing mechanisms available as well to owners, whether it's public sector, private sector, that can really help cover the cost of sustainable items, spread that cost over a long period of time. And if you do it right and you achieve the outcome that I advocate, net zero energy, you can basically use the money you used to spend on energy to pay for your capital improvements instead. And at some point you finish paying them off, and now there's no bill for energy, and tremendous savings take place.
That sounds pretty exciting. So the payment, how do people pay for these? You mentioned that you pay for it over a period of time. Tell us more about, there must be payment mechanisms out there right now.
So one that we helped develop at LACCD was the idea of power purchase agreement that basically allows the private sector to bring in investment capital and help provide the energy solution, whether it's from energy conservation elements, whether it's from renewable energy elements to do that. And the value of doing this in a public-private partnership is that the private sector can take advantage of the tax benefits that exist, whereas the public sector, of course, could not do that. So creating that partnership becomes a really important way to think about how you make that go forward and have that happen. The other program that's become really successful is Property Assessed Clean Energy, PACE, P-A-C-E. And PACE basically gives one the ability especially in private sector, to basically use your property tax payment process to pay for your energy by paying back the investment made by the private investor to do that. So whether using our purchase agreement, PACE, there are vehicles that are readily available, well proven today, that have great benefit to building owners.
Oh, that's exciting. So I know you've been working on other projects, not just in this country, but all over. So tell us what you've been working on and what's been able to be achieved with regards to sustainability.
So one area that's been challenging, I think, around the world is basically waste management. And we're pursuing projects overseas that would do waste to energy using a very efficient technology, plasma gasification, that basically so hot that it turns materials back into their atomic components, and there's no pollution that happens when you do that. And the idea that we would recycle out the recyclables first and then put the remaining material into process to create energy. And so these countries needed the energy badly. At the same time, they have a ton of waste, literally. And as a result, the idea that there's ways that we can help them tackle both issues at the same time. So to do that, in the United States, the opportunity we've been working on is really the net zero energy kind of projects, where we're helping to now build buildings that are designed from the beginning with a net zero energy philosophy. And so we have a hotel being built in Hollywood that will be a new little Hilton that will be net zero energy as part of it. We're working with a hotel development company that has other projects coming up in California and Arizona. We're working on a low-income housing project in Southern California that will be quite large, that will be net zero energy as well. So the message is really getting out. Then we're working on a project in Ohio that is really fascinating. It's for a company that has figured out a way to recycle waste plastic. And under a series of patents, they can take any kind of plastic material, recycle it, put it back into plastic production again, and across the 17 types of plastic. And for those few bits that they can't utilize, they can turn that material into diesel fuel and do that. And so we're helping them make their factory net zero. We're helping them identify the process that will allow that to take place. And they will have an appetite for all the plastic of the world. And so it's been a daunting.
I think there's a lot of it in the ocean. They go fishing.
And they have their relationship with 4Ocean, and those guys can start giving them the plastic. They have a relationship with a lot of industries now who have been sending all their plastic to landfill. And so from my standpoint, it's a win-win, because we can help with energy, but we can help take care of this plastics issue. You hear so many stories about all these places that have run out of room. They're dumping their plastic back into landfill. Mm-hmm. And it's such a waste, a horrible waste. I tell my son that and now my grandson, that the idea that landfills are the mines of the future. And we'll be mining all of that stuff out. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah. So look up, if you live near one, you may be on a gold mine there, huh?
Exactly right.
Or if your house is built on one. Yeah. We used to just think it was archaeological.
Exactly. Well, who knows what we'll discover.
Well, I know that you've been leading your company. You've led large organizations for many, many years. So what do you think, because I know you're always in the leading edge, what do you think is your strength as a leader?
So I actually have taught this stuff. And so I really have sort of a three-pronged kind of approach to leadership. One is the idea that I want to support innovation and out-of-the-box thinking as part of that. So I encourage the people that work for me to really press it and edge. And if they fail, to actually reward their failure to do that. Because if they're not failing, we're not learning, we're not making progress to do that. So that becomes really important. The other part is the simple idea of surrounding myself with really bright people. And if they do a great job, I'll look good. And that's always been the case to do that. And then the other part is just basic communication and feedback. And the idea that one of the things that's been a bugaboo through my career is the idea that so many places rely on feedback time as the annual evaluation. And I remember when I was a little young budget analyst and going in for my second annual evaluation, I had no idea what my boss was going to think. And I was thinking, oh my God, I'm going to get fired. There's no doubt. I've done a bad job and all of that. And I walk in, and he goes, "Oh, you're great. You're fabulous," and all of that. I'm like, and I got really angry because I was dreading the evaluation when in fact I should have been celebrating it to do. And so I've made it basically a practice the rest of my career to always give feedback continuously to people. So when it comes time for evaluation, there's zero surprise in terms of what that's going to be. They know what's going on. They could do it themselves for that matter. So those are my three things that I focus on for leadership.
That sounds great. And I can attest that you do that. So I know that in your career, not everything's always gone exactly as you had hoped. Take us back to a big challenge you faced and that worst moment of that challenge, and what did you do and what did you learn?
So I've been let go a number of times from my position, and each of those times is traumatic when you sit down and the boss says, it's time for you to look for something else. But the worst one was when I left LA Community College District, because as many people know, LA Times decided to run a series of articles based on 2 years of research by 2 reporters full-time looking at our program. And in first week of April 2011, March 2011, a series of articles came out, and I cooperated with them fully, and I really spent a lot of time with them to help them understand the program. And those articles turned out to be really quite negative about the program, and particularly negative about me. And I never expected that they were going to focus on me as the issue, but in fact they did. And out of that, ultimately, I told the board of trustees that they should fire me, so I could take all the heat with me. And but unfortunately, the heat didn't leave with me in the process. But there was subsequently a green ribbon committee assembled to review all of that, and the green ribbon committee concluded that LA Times articles were completely in error, up and down, everything that they wrote about. And so I was vindicated at the end, but the trauma of that process was really daunting. But on the other hand, it's the idea that one door closes, another door opens, and that's what led me to create Ovis Partners 360 when I left LACCD. And because I had a contract that had a termination and a parachute clause in it, I could use the funds that I got to start my new company. And so that worked out really well.
That sounds awesome. And all of us have had those challenges where you just don't know sometimes what's going to happen. It's just, and when you're in a leadership role, I think that's a really good lesson for people to realize that whenever you're in a leadership role, you're going to have people that love you, and you're going to have people who are going to throw darts at you, and you just have to learn how to dance.
That is completely true.
It just happens. You see it on social media too. A lot of people will say, well, if you don't have some negative, they must not be doing something right. You're being way too milquetoast. You got to be able to do some things that are a little controversial here and there. So what's the very best advice that you have ever gotten?
So one of my mentors was former governor of Wisconsin, Lee Dreyfus, who passed away many years ago. But I worked for him as a budget person and helped advance his several budget bills during his 4-year term. And one day I came to the governor and said, I'm really frustrated by the legislature. They're really idiots. And he said, Larry, the thing you need to realize is that our democracy is governed by the exact reflection of our population, that the legislature has bright people, it has people who are not so bright, but it's an exact reflection of our population. And as a result, not everybody is bright like you. And you need to deal with people in an equal kind of way and understand that everyone's not at your level, but basically deal with it as you can to make that happen. And that proved to be really valuable advice in going forward, to understand the challenges of dealing with employees, of dealing with outside people, clients, and so on, to do that, to understand that not everybody has my background, my skills, and I can work with them in an effective way because I understand that.
That sounds like really good advice for Congress to
Yeah.
kind of understand that. Yeah, that'd be nice. So you're kind of a tech guy. What's your favorite piece of tech that you use, maybe on a daily basis or regularly, that you think is helpful?
I'm not as techy as I would really like to be, but basically my laptop goes every place with me, and it's really quite useful. So that, whether it's spreadsheets or writing documents or whatever, or learning stuff on the internet, my laptop is critical for all of that.
Cool. So we ask everyone to give us a gift. This is a resource or that you would like to share with Construction Nation that would be helpful for us, either with sustainability, leadership, or in some other aspect that you think has been really meaningful to you. It could be a book, an article, link, podcast, anything that you would like to share.
So I've just finished reading it. I had been saving it. Technology Review, MIT's magazine, did a complete issue on climate change, and I took the time to sit there and read the entire issue word for word, and it was profound. It really was. It was depressing. It was also encouraging to see things that are going on, but it would really be. It's available online, and people can pull it out and look at it. Articles on all kinds of things, from impact in the oceans, from looking at how agriculture is going to work in the future, part of it, energy solutions. Really, really liked it.
So we'll put a link to that on in your show notes, so we'll have it.
Great.
Um, I would know. A friend of mine just came back from a week in Bali, and she was telling me how everything there is talking about climate change because they're so profoundly affected by it on the island that you can't go anywhere that people aren't talking about it. And we're very isolated here on this big. I think the larger bodies of water are more isolated from some of it. So yeah, in the United States, we don't talk about it as much as other
No,
places in
I'm,
the
I'm
world.
really quite fearful because you look at just Umberto and what happened there for Bahamas in particular. The reality is that the Caribbean is going to not be a fit place to populate. People are going to have to stop living on the Caribbean islands. It's not sustainable for life.
Yeah.
And the migration that will cause, that we're going to see through climate change, is enormous. And the physical change of where people need to go. And it's something around the world that's happening as sea level rises and the weather gets worse. There are places you won't be able to live.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll put a link to that and then I'm sure it'll be extremely helpful to so many people who are thinking about it. I mean, especially owners who maybe live by a body of water or something, but all of us need to be thinking about these things. So how can Construction Nation get a hold of you if they're interested in talking to you more about sustainability?
So I am on LinkedIn. I don't use other social media. I don't like it. I think it's actually not good and actually damaging to our society. But LinkedIn, I do utilize that. I have a large number of contacts on LinkedIn to do
And
that.
we'll put a link to your LinkedIn profile there so they can get a hold of you.
Yeah.
So, what parting advice do you have for all of us if we wanted to start today or tomorrow in maybe taking what we're doing to the next level in our sustainability?
So what I tell people is that it's time to stop talking about this and start doing. And I used to go to conferences all the time, talk with people, and I gave that up because I got way too frustrated. So my my feeling is, and the idea that people just need to make the decision to build sustainably, to pursue net zero energy on new and existing buildings. There's no reason not to. The financing is there to make that entirely possible, and in fact is greatly beneficial to owners' bottom line, whether public or private sector, to do. So what I really urge is that people just, as they're working on a new building design, make it sustainable, LEED Platinum. There's no reason not to. On a retrofit, incorporate in everything that you can. And the idea of achieving net zero, entirely possible now. So just do it.
And with that, we say thank you. Thank you so much for all your great work you've done and that you're going to do here and abroad. So thanks, Larry, for joining us today on Construction Dream Team. And okay, everybody, we have our marching orders here. We got to go out and we got to work to create more sustainability. I know I just worked on a really large project and we're working on it. And we were talking about it last week about some of the innovations we had created. And at the beginning, this is a 2 million square foot building, and nobody thought it was possible to create the kind of energy saving that we have. And everyone at the beginning, everyone said, that's impossible. It can't be done. And they actually did better than they thought they could have of what they thought was impossible. So it's like, okay, there's a lot of new stuff out there. It's a lot of new things happening. And when the innovation and people's minds get working on it, it's just amazing what's happening. And so explore, ask questions, and just make it happen. It's one of the most creative areas that we have in our industry right now. So thank you so much, Larry.
Thank you, Sue. Appreciate it.
Okay, Construction Nation, remember, dream teams don't just happen. They don't grow on trees. You have to make them happen, and they happen one step at a time. And Construction Dream Team will drop again next Monday at 4 a.m. Pacific time. So join me then when I will interview another industry leader or expert about the people side of construction. And certainly we all live in the buildings. That's our people side. And the people have to make the commitments to making sustainability occur. So build your construction dream team and make it sustainable. Thank you for joining me today. And I will catch you next time.